Abdul Ghani Baradar, the Deputy Prime Minister, called for the construction of the second Salin tunnel during a meeting with Abdullah Aripov, the Prime Minister of Uzbekistan. Baradar emphasized that this tunnel plays a crucial role in expanding economic and transit relations between South Asia and Central Asia. On Saturday, March 4, Baradar traveled to Uzbekistan at the head of a delegation for a two-day visit. In Tashkent, he discussed economic cooperation and political and security relations between the two countries with Abdullah Aripov, the Prime Minister, and Jamshid Khodjayev, the Deputy Prime Minister of Uzbekistan. During these meetings, Baradar urged Uzbekistan to invest in the second Salin tunnel project, which connects Central Asia to South Asia. He stressed that this tunnel is particularly important for enhancing trade and transit relations between Central and South Asia. A design and plan for the second phase of the Salin tunnel had been prepared during the previous Afghan government, but the former administration never succeeded in implementing this project. The Salin tunnel, constructed in 1964 by the Soviet Union, connects northern Afghanistan to its central and southern regions. According to a press release from Mullah Baradar's office, he emphasized the neutral foreign policy of the group in Tashkent. He stated, "Our foreign policy towards neighboring countries and the region is based on the principle of neutrality and non-interference, and we expect the same from neighboring countries and the world." Mullah Baradar assured neighboring countries and the world that Afghan territory will not pose a threat to them. The economic deputy also mentioned that the Islamic Emirate has prevented the cultivation, production, and trafficking of narcotics. In a joint economic meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister of Uzbekistan, he called for the acceleration of banking transfers between the two countries. He requested the facilitation of fund transfers from Afghan banks through Uzbek banks to other countries. The economic deputy stated, "In trade relations between Afghanistan and Uzbekistan, the national currencies of both countries should be used." He also pointed out the challenges faced by Afghan traders in transferring goods to the common market with Uzbekistan and called for solutions to these problems to strengthen joint trade relations. Baradar added that Afghan traders encounter difficulties in obtaining permits for trade with Uzbekistan and proposed the elimination of permits to facilitate trade between the two countries. He further requested facilities for visa issuance for Afghan merchants and emphasized that Uzbekistan's control and inspection of Afghan export goods have increased. Baradar mentioned that the seals on goods are being broken and are subject to strict scrutiny. Abdullah Aripov, the Prime Minister of Uzbekistan, visited Kabul on August 18 of this year and signed contracts worth $2.5 billion with the Islamic Emirate. Elon Musk to federal employees in the U.S., "Do not submit your performance report from last week, you will be fired." Elon Musk, head of government productivity in the Trump administration, threatened that any federal employee who cannot explain what they did last week will be terminated. Musk wrote on X on Saturday, "Not responding to this email will be considered a resignation." Musk stated on Saturday, "All federal employees will soon receive an email asking them to report what they did last week. Not responding to this email will be considered a resignation." It is still unclear what legal basis Musk has for firing federal employees if they do not respond to this request. According to the ceasefire agreement in Gaza, Hamas has released 6 Israeli hostages. A number of people gathered in anticipation of the release of these 6 hostages. Among the 6 hostages released today, Saturday, March 4, 2 had been detained by Hamas about a decade ago after entering Gaza. In return, Israel is set to release 602 Palestinian prisoners after the outbreak of the war, to complete the first phase of the hostage exchange. The multi-phase ceasefire in Gaza was implemented on January 19, but negotiations for transitioning to the second phase, which includes a permanent end to the Gaza war, have not yet begun. Europe has been sidelined from negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. What will its reaction be? European leaders will gather on February 17 for an emergency meeting to discuss Russia's three-year war against Ukraine. This hastily arranged meeting in Paris is in response to growing concerns that the United States and Russia may negotiate to end the war without involving Ukraine and its European allies. European leaders are expected to present a united front and consider new proposals to support Ukraine and strengthen European security. It seems that a group of EU countries has clearly stated that they do not intend to be part of a hasty and unsuitable agreement, and they are focused on continuing support for Ukraine, said Magda Ruga, a senior researcher at the European Council on Foreign Relations based in Berlin. Concerns in Europe intensified after Kurt Volker, Trump's representative for Ukraine and Russia, stated on February 15 that Europe would not be directly involved in peace negotiations. On the same day, it was revealed that American and Russian officials would meet this week in Saudi Arabia to begin negotiations to end the war without Ukraine's presence.
A few days prior to these developments, U.S.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin stated that Washington is no longer primarily focused on European security, which is another blow to the European continent. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's actions have sounded the alarm in Europe, leaving European leaders confused about how to respond to this unilateral U.S. approach to ending the war in Ukraine. However, it remains unclear whether Europe can overcome its deep divisions and present a clear strategy for ending the war in Ukraine and dealing with Russia. Ian Garner, a Russia expert at the Pilsudski Institute in Warsaw, holds this belief. Europe has spent more time discussing, issuing statements, and engaging in diplomatic calls than actually fulfilling its promises and providing tangible support to Ukraine or pursuing an independent policy. European officials have warned that a hasty peace agreement or ceasefire would undermine the security of Ukraine and Europe. Currently, Europe is the largest financial supporter of Ukraine, even surpassing the United States, but it lags behind in military support, despite promises to increase defense spending and weapon production in recent years. Aside from Hungary and Slovakia, there is widespread support for Ukraine in Europe, but differences are still evident. Garner states, in theory, everyone is on the same path. But when you look at the finer details, you realize that there are disagreements. The establishment of a European military camp is a clear example of these differences. Some European leaders have suggested that European military forces be deployed to ensure security after a peace agreement in Ukraine, but this idea has been rejected by some officials, including Kaja Kallas, the EU's foreign policy chief. Garner believes that all these European leaders are still caught up in vague possibilities. He adds, no one has yet presented a comprehensive, coherent, and joint plan that shows what exactly Europe is willing to do. Therefore, it is natural for Trump, Putin, and even Zelensky to not take Europe seriously.